Wealth, prosperity, harmony with nature. Singapore has it all, right? This small island nation is admired worldwide, celebrated for its meteoric rise, spotless streets, and lush green spaces nestled among skyscrapers. For many, Singapore is the ultimate success story, proof that with grit and vision, a country can transform itself. But there's a side few notice, a price hidden behind all that polished glass and greenery. Beneath the surface, Singapore's rapid development has come with its own challenges and sacrifices. Some call it the dark side of success. High housing costs, an intense work culture, rising inequality, and a quiet squeeze on happiness. Stick around till the end, and you might just understand why they say, poverty is hardship, wealth doesn't guarantee happiness, and only knowing what's enough brings true peace. The pursuit of happiness, or is it just a rat race? Ever wondered, what's the real purpose of life? Is it happiness, success, or perhaps building a better life, not just for yourself, but for your country? For Singapore, that's exactly how it all began. In the 1960s, when Singapore gained independence under Lee Kuan Yew, people were encouraged to embrace hard work as both a personal and civic duty. Facing poverty and limited resources, Lee Kuan Yew called on every citizen to lift Singapore out of struggle and into prosperity. And it worked. Over the following decades, Singapore transformed from a small, struggling island into a global economy shaped by discipline, diligence, and vision. But with this drive came a mindset almost second nature here, kiasu, a Hokkien term meaning fear of losing. This culture has pushed Singaporeans to be the best and stay ahead in work, in school, in every part of life. Over time, kiasu wove itself into the social fabric, showing up in schools where kids feel the pressure to excel, and workplaces where professionals put in long hours. And while it's driven success, it has a flip side, the toll of constantly striving to stay on top. A 2023 survey by Randstad Singapore highlights this. 41% of Singaporeans would consider leaving their jobs just to find some balance. Almost half the workforce, so tired and drained, would trade stability for a chance at peace. And it's not just adults. Kids, teens, young adults, they all feel it. The pressure to compete, excel, and make the grade starts early, before they even truly know themselves. Has the government noticed this pressure cooker? Absolutely. In recent years, they've introduced initiatives to tackle mental health and promote work-life balance. Flexible hours, mental health campaigns, and counseling in schools are part of the plan to ease some of the pressure. And while these efforts continue, they show an awareness of the cost of an overly driven society. Whether these measures will make a difference is still up for debate. Balancing growth with well-being is one of Singapore's toughest challenges. After all, even the most successful society has to ask, at what point does success come at too high a price? So, why do we struggle, toil, and chase success all our lives? Money, success, they may be life's greatest pressures. And in the end, when we look back, it might all feel empty, leaving us with too little time to truly enjoy the fruits of our hard work. High expectations and the cost for kids. Now, hard work might have powered Singapore's rise, but it's also built a society where high expectations start young. In fact, here in Singapore, children are often introduced to competition almost as soon as they can read. Singapore's education system is rigorous and once utilized a system called streaming. Although this method was designed to help students learn at their own pace, for many, It felt like early labeling. Lately, the government has tried to ease the pressure a bit, moving towards a more holistic approach that's less focused on academic labels. Imagine being a young kid, feeling like you've already been put into a category. Even as the system evolves, the experience of streaming left a strong impression. For those placed in lower streams, there's often a lingering sense of failure, a feeling of falling behind. This pressure can take a toll on kids' self-esteem and mental well-being, long before they even understand what they want to do in life. And it doesn't stop there. The intense focus on academic achievement means students face constant pressure to perform, to hit certain grades, to meet high expectations. Many of these kids barely have time to just be kids. Creativity and natural curiosity often take a backseat to exams, grades, and rankings. It's all about results. Studies have shown that this constant push to succeed has led to high levels of stress and anxiety among students. They feel the weight of competition, not just with their peers, but against the high bar set by society. For some, this can lead to burnout before they even reach adulthood. Recognizing the impact, the government has started to make changes. Recently, they've been moving away from rigid streaming, working to make education less about labels and more about holistic development. But the culture of competition is deeply ingrained, and change takes time. Singapore's future may depend on finding a balance, encouraging success without sacrificing well-being. The housing crisis, where affordable is just a myth. Imagine Singapore, a sleek, modern city with towering skyscrapers and spotless sidewalks. But beneath that shine, there's a hard truth. Housing costs here rank among the highest in the world, just behind Hong Kong. Without government support, most middle-income families would struggle to afford private property, where monthly mortgage payments can eat up 50 to 60% of their income. Fortunately, the Housing and Development Board, or HDB, provides crucial support. With government subsidies, many families only spend around 20 to 40% of their income on housing, much less than in cities like Hong Kong or New York. But here's the catch. Not everyone qualifies for these subsidies. Middle-income families, often called the sandwich class, earn too much to benefit from HDB's affordable housing. Yet they're far from wealthy enough to comfortably afford private property. As a result, they're left paying 50 to 60% of their monthly income just on private housing, a heavy financial burden. Middle-income families who don't qualify for HDB subsidies often end up spending a large chunk of their income on private housing. To put this into perspective, in many developed countries, an affordable housing cost is considered to be around 30% of income. In the United States, for instance, average housing expenses hover around 25 to 30% of income, while in Canada and across the European Union, typical rates range from 20 to 35%. Paying over half of one's income on housing is seen as a severe financial burden and is far higher than in most developed nations. Trapped between not qualifying for subsidies and the steep prices of the private market, homeownership becomes a daunting challenge for this group. For the sandwich class, it's a frustrating position with no truly affordable options. So, what do these middle-income families do? Many end up compromising, renting smaller private units, staying with extended family, or cutting back on essentials just to save up for a down payment. It's a frustrating no man's land where homeownership feels out of reach. How did we get here? Singapore's rapid economic rise brought a surge in demand and skyrocketing housing costs. The government anticipated this back in the 60s and created HDB to provide affordable housing. It worked. Today, over 80% of locals live in HDB flats. But with a booming population and limited land, demand for HDB flats keeps climbing, pushing up resale prices and putting pressure on young families. The government is doing its best to keep up. They've rolled out grants, subsidies, and high-density building projects to create more affordable housing options. However, with limited land and growing demand, finding affordable solutions remains a major challenge. New initiatives are in place, but the road ahead is tough. So that's the housing puzzle in Singapore. High demand, limited space, and an island that can only grow upwards. While the skyline shines, the hidden struggle for affordable housing continues. Just one piece of the challenges facing Singapore today. The high cost of everyday life. So let's talk about another reality check. The cost of just living. Picture yourself shopping for dinner or paying school fees, and suddenly you realize that life in Singapore isn't just expensive, it's really expensive. Singapore's skyline may be stunning, but the view comes with a price. Groceries, not cheap. Eating out, even pricier. And for many families, just covering the basics, food, transportation, utilities, feels like running a marathon every month. And it's not just groceries. Healthcare? Well, let's just say staying healthy here might be the best budget strategy. Singapore's healthcare is top-notch, but quality care comes with a price. Doctor's visits, medications, hospital stays, they add up fast, especially for older families. And then there's education. Singapore's schools are world-class, but quality education? It's anything but cheap. From tuition fees to tutoring, the costs have grown. And for many families, keeping up with their child's schooling feels essential, yet financially challenging. The government has pitched in with healthcare subsidies and education grants, but with living costs always rising, it can feel like an endless chase. Singapore might be prosperous, but for many households, maintaining that standard of living feels like a balancing act. And let's be real, Singapore's high cost of living isn't just a challenge for locals. Newcomers feel it too. Housing, cars, daily expenses, they're all at a premium. The price tags can be, well, jaw-dropping. It's the kind of sticker shock that makes even seasoned travelers do a double take. This is life in Singapore, world-class, polished, but at a cost that's hard to ignore. Underneath, there's a world of pressures that come with that glitter. The wealth gap, a tale of two Singapores. So here's something surprising. For a country as advanced as Singapore, you'd expect everyone to be living comfortably, right? But reality isn't quite that simple. Singapore is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, yet the gap between the richest and the rest, well, it's wider than most people realize. Income inequality in Singapore stands out among developed nations. The Gini coefficient hit a high of 0.482 in the early 2000s, highlighting a substantial income gap. Since then, the government has taken steps to reduce this, and by 2022, it had come down to 0.437, and then 0.433 in 2023. While this shows progress, Singapore's Gini remains high compared to other developed nations. For context, Many Western countries have adjusted Gini scores between 0.25 and 0.35, thanks to strong social support and progressive tax systems. So while Singapore's adjusted score has improved, it's still on the higher side. This means that while some live in luxurious high-rises, others struggle just to cover essentials like housing and food. Singapore's success as a global business hub has brought wealth, but it hasn't been spread evenly. Top professionals and business owners thrive, while many working-class folks see wages lagging behind the rising cost of living. The government understands this challenge. Programs like housing subsidies, healthcare grants, and the progressive wage model are aimed at narrowing the divide, but balancing economic growth with social equality will take time. So while Singapore shines on the global stage, not everyone shares in that success equally. The wealth gap remains one of the country's biggest challenges, with effects that ripple through society. Stick around and we'll take a closer look. The population paradox, a growing population, yet fewer births. So here's a tough question. How does a thriving city keep growing when people are having fewer kids? In Singapore, that's a real issue. People are delaying or even skipping marriage and kids altogether, and it's not because they don't want a family. It's more like, have you seen how much it costs to raise one here? While Singapore's population has increased due to immigration, the country faces a persistent challenge with low birth rates, despite various government incentives for local families. With a booming economy and plenty of high-skilled jobs, Singapore attracts talent from all over the world. These newcomers bring diversity, energy, and they help fill workforce gaps, keeping the city competitive. But here's the flip side. Among Singaporeans, birth rates have been dropping for years. With high costs of living, steep housing prices, and intense work pressures, many locals feel the timing isn't right to start a family. For some, raising children feels like a financial leap they're just not ready to make. The result? Singapore's birth rate is one of the lowest globally. This creates a tricky balance. While immigration keeps the economy moving and supports the labor force, it doesn't solve the underlying issue, an aging local population that's outpacing the younger generation. Fewer young Singaporeans means fewer people entering the workforce, and over time, it puts more pressure on social support systems. To address this, the government's been encouraging locals to start families. From financial grants for new parents to tax breaks and even workplace support for parents, they're trying to make having kids more feasible. But in a society as high pressure as Singapore, changing mindsets takes time, and starting a family still feels like a big step for many. So, Singapore's population paradox isn't just about numbers, it's about finding a sustainable balance. From welcoming immigrants to supporting local families, Singapore is working to keep the Lion City vibrant. But it's a tightrope walk, and only time will tell if these efforts are enough. Freedom and control, walking a fine line. So here's something that sparks a lot of debate: freedom. In Singapore, the government places a high value on stability and social order, which has been a key part of the city-state's success. But that stability comes with its own set of rules, and one of the most noticeable? The tight control over media and freedom of expression. Singapore's media is regulated to ensure stability and order, with limitations on certain forms of dissent or government criticism. While this approach prioritizes societal harmony, it narrows the range of publicly available viewpoints. for some, this raises questions about free speech and civic rights. It's not just the media either. To maintain this social order, there are regulations that impact certain personal freedoms too. Public gatherings, political speeches, even some forms of online expression are carefully regulated. The idea is to prevent any disruptions that could harm the social fabric. Supporters argue that this approach has created a safe, stable society. It's one of the reasons Singapore is known for its low crime rates and high quality of life. But others feel that the cost of this control is a limitation on personal freedom, the freedom to speak openly, to express differing views, to feel that your voice can contribute to change. So, where's the line between order and freedom? In Singapore, it's a fine balance. The success story of this city-state is built on stability, but that stability sometimes feels like a tightrope walk for those who want more freedom to express themselves. The Lion City has achieved something remarkable, but here, freedom has its own unique boundaries. And that's the complex story behind Singapore's glittering success. From rapid growth to hidden struggles, this city-state has shown the world what's possible with resilience and vision, but also the challenges that come with it. What do you think? Is the cost worth it? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating places around the world. See you next time.